Welcome to the deep dive. Our mission, as always, is to filter out the noise and really extract the essential insight you need to navigate some of the world's most complex challenges.
And today, we are staring down a technological threat that is so profound, so sudden, that it genuinely had the capacity to reset the global balance of power, seemingly overnight.
We are diving deep into the core vulnerability of the entire digital age. We're talking about the coming of Q-Day, the quantum arms race, and the systemic crisis that's really already underway.
Yeah, this deep dive is built on a stack of sources that, they synthesize cutting-edge quantum physics analysis with the latest strategic context from the Global Risk Report 2026.
So we're seeing two worlds collide here.
We really are. What we're seeing is a technical timeline that's just accelerating into a geopolitical reality. And it's forcing us to confront the fact that the very foundation of global digital trust, how we secure banking, government, all of our IP, it's all supported by a form of classical cryptography that we know, theoretically, can be broken.
Okay, let's unpack this immediately because the entire premise really hinges on that one single terrifying concept. For listeners who need to ground this right away, what exactly is Q-Day?
Q-Day is the critical milestone. It's the term experts in the field use. It's that precise moment a large-scale, fault-tolerant quantum computer becomes powerful enough.
Powerful enough in what way?
Specifically in terms of qubit count and stability. Powerful enough to efficiently run Shor's algorithm and break high-level classical encryption.
And when we say high level, we're talking about the stuff that runs the world.
Exactly. Standards like RSA 2048. It is the backbone of modern secure communication. And the day part of Q-Day is maybe the most crucial time frame. It's about breaking that encryption within a relevant window, which experts usually define as, 24 hours.
Breaking decades of security and data protection in a single day, that is the definition of a catastrophic risk. But the crucial question for you, the listener, has to be the timing. Is this still some far-off hypothetical, or is it an immediate, urgent threat?
It's an immediate mandate. Our sources are all confirming that this is a near-term strategic concern that requires action today, not tomorrow. I mean, this isn't a 50-year problem anymore.
So the timeline has shrunk.
Dramatically. The expert consensus, and this is compiled from 2024 data, it's sobering. 53% of quantum experts believe there is at least a 50% likelihood of Q-Day occurring within the next decade.
Half of all experts, a coin flip chance within 10 years.
A coin flip, yeah. And that puts preparation for this event square in the middle of this decade's strategic planning cycle. It means the risk isn't just real, it's statistically probable within most organizations' standard long-term planning windows.
So our mission for this deep dive is really driven by that timeline. We need to understand three core things. One, the technical architecture of this threat, how Shor's algorithm creates a systemic crisis for digital trust and data confidentiality.
And two, how this threat is currently fueling the geopolitical fragmentation described in the Global Risk Report 2026, creating what they call an age of competition.
And finally, three, why the staggering global readiness gap, the fact that almost no one is prepared, is currently one of the biggest risks we face today.
It truly is a convergence of technical vulnerability, geopolitical confrontation, and just institutional inertia. Understanding this convergence is the key to building the necessary resilience in a world facing sudden systemic digital shocks.
The vulnerability is singular, but the consequences are vast.
That's a perfect way to put it.
And when the risk is this fundamental, the potential collapse of global digital trust and infrastructure, you just cannot afford to be behind the curve. If you're navigating the complex, high-stakes world of CISO responsibilities, or you're tracking digital threats to ensure your organization's resilience, you need intelligence that isn't just current, but predictive.
Foresight is the ultimate competitive advantage.
It is. And before we jump into the quantum weapon itself, we want to thank our sponsors, www.cisomarketplace.com and www.breach.company, who are dedicated to providing the insight, resources, and critical intelligence necessary to manage these extreme and accelerating security risks. All right, let's start with the root cause, the quantum weapon itself, Shor's algorithm. For our audience, we know it's powerful, but let's go a layer deeper. What exactly is its technical role, and why is it so fundamentally disruptive to, well, every secure transaction we make?
To really understand Shor's, you have to first understand the defense that it breaks. All of our current classical high-level cryptography like RSA, it relies on a very specific, complex mathematical problem.
Factoring extremely large number.
Factoring extremely large numbers, yes. We use these massive numbers to create public and private key pairs. The security isn't that the problem is unsolvable, it's that solving it takes an impractically long time for a classical supercomputer.
How long are we talking?
We're talking about computations that would take billions of years. Billions. Which makes the data essentially safe for eternity, or so we thought.
So the classical computer is like a thief who has to try every single key on the world's largest keyring, one after the other, sequentially. It's safe only because the thief will die of old age long before they find the right key.
That is the perfect analogy for classical processing. It's brute force, but on a timescale that makes it impossible. Now consider the quantum computer running Shor's algorithm. It doesn't explore keys one by one.
It does something fundamentally different.
Completely different. Using the principles of superposition and entanglement, a functional quantum computer can simultaneously explore all possible keys, all possible factors at once. It's a mechanism for period finding that transforms that once impossible factorization problem into a near instantaneous trivial calculation.
So it's not a stronger key picker.
No, not at all. It is a universal key. And this is why the successful deployment of Shor's algorithm at scale grants a winner-take-all strategic advantage.
That is a staggering power shift. And the scary part, as the sources highlight, is that the threat isn't just theoretical for tomorrow, it's already profoundly affecting our security posture today. You mentioned this chilling concept of the Harvest Now, Decrypt Later campaign.
Yes.
Can you detail exactly what that involves and why it transforms quantum risk into a present-day crisis?
This is the absolute critical link for everyone to understand, because Q-Day is coming. Adversaries, state actors primarily, but also, well-funded criminal enterprises, they are currently conducting massive campaigns to steal and store enormous volumes of encrypted data today.
So they're just hoarding it.
They're hoarding it. They can't decrypt this data now because the hardware isn't ready, but they are patiently stockpiling it, anticipating the moment the quantum hardware matures enough to run Shor's. They are banking on the future vulnerability of past and present encryption.
So they are building the ultimate digital treasure chest filled with the secrets of today and just waiting for the key to be forged. What specifically is in that chest? What types of data have such a long shelf life and strategic value that they warrant this kind of multi-year, multi-billion-dollar campaign?
The list is devastating, really. It falls into two categories: high long-term value and immediate identity risk. On the identity front, we're seeing the systematic theft of personally identifiable information, II.
PII, so everything from names, birth dates.
Everything. Names, dates of birth, social security numbers, addresses, all of which are essential for mass identity theft, long-term espionage, synthetic identity creation, you name it. We're also talking about incredibly sensitive medical records that can be used for blackmail or even targeted health attacks down the line.
And that PII, once decrypted, could be used years from now to undermine entire economies, not just individuals.
Absolutely. But the real prize, the most strategically valuable target, is the intellectual property, IP. This includes patents, proprietary formulas, advanced R&D from corporations, blueprints for future technologies. Decrypting this IP would allow rival nations to leapfrog years of R&D investment instantly.
And the government secrets.
And the government secrets. Finally, the targets include decades of sensitive diplomatic exchanges, classified intelligence reports, military strategies, strategic energy plans. All of this data, encrypted 10 or even 20 years ago, which we all assumed was safe forever due to the complexity of factoring, becomes instantly readable after Q-Day.
The strategic advantage gained by the first actor to achieve this quantum advantage would be profound. It's not just catching up. It's seeing rivals' entire operational history, their future plans, their strategic intentions, all without any risk of interception.
It's a foundational shift in global power, derived solely from information access, which is why this is so central to the geopolitical fragmentation we're going to discuss. It creates a new form of digital détente, where the side that achieves quantum advantage first has unprecedented, perhaps unassailable, informational superiority.
Okay, let's move from confidentiality, the theft of data, to the second, and I think you could argue more terrifying, systemic impact. The collapse of digital trust. If Shor's algorithm breaks the foundations of classical cryptography, what happens to authentication? That process of verifying identity, integrity, trust, it's the glue holding the digital world together.
Well, if authentication protocols are broken, the consequences cascade, and they could potentially paralyze society. Our entire digital ecosystem relies on what is called public key infrastructure, or PKI.
Right.
PKI is what allows your phone to trust your bank server. It's what verifies a digital signature on a contract, and what ensures that the person or device on the other end is who or what they claim to be.
So if the key that proves my identity is compromised, the system can no longer tell if I am me, or if that crucial legally binding contract is real, or if that instruction to transfer $1 billion is legitimate.
Precisely. Attackers could instantaneously forge digital signatures and impersonate digital identities at will. Think about the direct economic consequences. This would lead to the immediate takeover of online wallets, the forgery of digital contracts used in global trade, a complete compromise of the chain of trust in financial institutions.
The sources suggest the economic instability could be catastrophic.
It could be. If digital signatures underpinning trade and derivative markets are compromised, those markets could halt or experience massive, massive losses.
And what's the ultimate societal risk here? If trust is broken at this foundational level, do people just stop using digital services?
That is the ultimate systemic risk. A sudden, mass breaking of these protocols leading to a systemic collapse of digital trust. If people cannot trust the security and integrity of platforms handling their most sensitive data, healthcare, banking, legal records, they will revert.
They'll go offline.
They'll go offline. This could cause a mass shift away from digital services for sensitive areas, a sudden reversal of decades of digitalization, resulting in enormous economic disruption, widespread fraud, and systemic inefficiency.
And we can't overlook the physical threat here. Our critical infrastructure is increasingly managed digitally, often remotely, and it relies on these same cryptographic trust systems.
They absolutely are. So many industrial control systems and critical infrastructure assets, the systems managing utility grids, water treatment plants, manufacturing lines, even things like self-driving vehicle networks, they all rely on digital authentication and secure command channels.
So if these protocols are bypassed after Q-Day,
Then quantum attacks could lead to frequent, devastating cyber attacks with horrifying physical outcomes. We're talking about contaminated water supplies, mass transport accidents, or widespread, prolonged power blackouts. The stakes move well beyond financial loss and into existential public safety.
that level of risk, combined with the fact that these control systems often have incredibly long operational lifespans, sometimes 20 or 30 years, means they represent a massive pre-existing vulnerability that may be impossible to patch quickly.
The difficulty of retrofitting legacy critical infrastructure cannot be overstated. It's a massive project, even without a looming existential threat, which is why the time factor we'll get to in Part 4 is just so critical.
The technical threat of Q-Day is clearly massive. But as the Global Risks Report 2026, the GRPS makes so clear, this threat doesn't exist in a vacuum. It's accelerating within a context of profound geopolitical and economic stress.
Right.
Let's zoom out now and use the GRPS findings to place this quantum crisis into the larger global context. What is the overarching diagnosis the report offers about the world right now?
The overarching theme is strikingly clear. We have entered an age of competition in a world that is becoming dangerously fragmented. I mean, the global mechanisms for cooperation and dispute resolution are, frankly, crumbling, and they're being replaced by aggressive unilateral competition.
And that's leading to a pretty grim outlook.
A decidedly negative perception of the future. The GRPS found that a full 50% of global leaders and experts surveyed anticipate either a turbulent or stormy outlook over the next 2 years.
That's already high, a majority expecting instability.
And that instability forecast, it just mounts further when you extend the view. It rises to 57% over the next 10 years, with only a vanishingly small 1% anticipating a calm outlook across either time horizon.
So we're on a shared precipice.
We are. And technological risks like quantum computing aren't just individual threats anymore. They're compounding the existing geopolitical risks. They're acting as an accelerant for global rivalry.
And the number one risk that the GRPS identifies as most likely to trigger a material crisis on a global scale today is political, but it's wielded with economic force.
Correct. Geo-economic confrontation is the top risk most likely to trigger a material crisis in 2026. It was selected by 18% of respondents. And crucially, it has risen 2 positions and holds that number 1 spot for the next 2 years as well.
Which signals a fundamental shift in how nations compete.
A huge shift. It's moving beyond traditional military positioning toward a kind of economic warfare.
How is that confrontation defined? I mean, we aren't just talking about trade disputes anymore. We're talking about the deliberate weaponization of global trade flows.
Precisely. This confrontation involves the strategic deployment of a variety of economic levers. So you've got sanctions, tariffs, investment controls which limit foreign ownership or influence, and stringent trade controls that restrict the flow of goods, specialized knowledge, services, or technology.
And the goal.
The intent is twofold: to consolidate spheres of influence by creating dependencies and to build self-sufficiency in critical areas while actively constraining your geopolitical rivals.
And what's crucial for our deep dive is that this confrontation is already explicitly targeting the quantum ecosystem. It's ensuring that this technical race is happening right inside a global economic war.
Absolutely. The source material highlights that this strategic rivalry is intensely focused on frontier technology. Sectors that have recently been targeted with increasingly stringent sanctions, export controls, and investment bans include AI, high-end chips, biotech, quantum, drones, and rare earths.
So technology is the central battlefield.
It's the central axis of strategic rivalry between the leading powers.
And we're seeing a new form of digital isolationism emerge. For instance, the U.S. has implemented controls on specialized cooling equipment dilution refrigerators, which are absolutely necessary for building high-end superconducting quantum computers.
Right.
This isn't just about selling a cheap product, it's about controlling the choke points of the quantum supply chain globally.
That's a perfect example of weaponizing technology. By controlling access to the key components, whether that's specialized hardware, unique rare earth materials, or foundational software, a nation can dramatically slow the research and military progress of its rivals without ever firing a shot. It reinforces that bipolar dynamic we'll get to.
Now, let's connect this quantum and geopolitical risk to the broader societal fractures the GRPS highlights, particularly in our information environment.
The technological risks are now immediate consequences of this fragmented, competitive age. Cyber insecurity ranks as high as #6 in the 2-year outlook, and it's explicitly identified as the leading systemic consequence stemming from the adverse outcomes of frontier technologies, a category that includes quantum.
So if the quantum threat lands in this environment, it hits a society that's already deeply fractured.
Exactly. And the information environment, which would need to be stable to manage a Q-day crisis, is already dangerously fragile because of misinformation.
It's extremely fragile.
The GRPS shows a really tight and worrying feedback loop between misinformation and disinformation, which is the #2 short-term risk, and societal polarization, the #4 short-term risk.
And distrust is just pervasive.
It is. A staggering 58% of respondents globally are concerned about distinguishing truth from falsehood in online news. This blurring of digital reality means that populations are already highly susceptible to manipulation. So if a catastrophic, system-wide event like Q-Day occurred, it could be instantly exploited by actors seeking political gain, driving panic, and further division.
And finally, we have to talk about the AI wildcard. Because quantum and AI are converging, and AI alone is driving some of the sharpest increases in long-term risk perception.
Oh, absolutely. Adverse outcomes of AI technologies shows the sharpest increase in ranking over time. It vaulted from #30 on the 2-year outlook all the way to #5 on the 10-year outlook. This reflects profound long-term anxieties that stretch far beyond, just technological novelty.
What are the two biggest tangible anxieties from AI that fundamentally impact society and the economy over the next decade, according to these sources?
We see these dual interconnected concerns that really link back to instability. First, the labor displacement risk is immense. Conservative estimates suggest AI could potentially eliminate up to 50% of white-collar entry-level jobs within the next 5 years in the United States alone.
50%.
50%. Even if the economy later generates new, highly specialized jobs, the potential for such massive, rapid displacement threatens to hollow out the middle class, exacerbate inequality, which the GRPS identifies as the most interconnected risk globally, and drive deep societal alienation.
And when you have that level of internal instability, the financial system becomes even more brittle.
Precisely. And that leads to the second major concern: volatility in the financial realm. The sheer power and speed of these new technologies, particularly AI used for automated trading and soon quantum optimization for financial modeling, may just exceed the capacity of existing financial regulations to manage them.
So the fear is a flash crash.
A flash crash of unprecedented scale, especially given the frenzy of investment interest we've seen recently in related sectors like AI-related stocks, nuclear, quantum, and rare earths. It raises all the classic concerns of asset bubbles and subsequent economic instability.
The sources repeatedly frame this situation as a quantum arms race. We mentioned the nuclear analogy earlier. Let's delve into why that comparison holds up and what it means for global stability, especially when you consider the speed of technological convergence.
The nuclear analogy is apt because quantum capability, specifically the ability to unilaterally break the global communications security apparatus, it grants disproportionate global power and strategic leverage. It's a first-strike capability without ever launching a missile.
And that's driving this intense competition.
It is. The leading powers are engaged in a high-stakes race for technological leadership, which is accelerating the convergence between fields like AI and quantum computing to maximize that advantage.
And this competition is explicitly leading to a major bifurcation of the global tech landscape, much like the Cold War divided technological spheres.
Yes. The sources predict a clear and likely destabilizing bipolar outcome. A bipolar quantum ecosystem is emerging, almost certainly led by the US and China. And crucially, this system will feature limited interoperability, competing technological standards, and highly restricted access to key components and talent pipelines.
What does that mean practically for smaller nations or corporations? How do they navigate that?
It means enormous technological pressure. For countries outside the sphere of either superpower, aligning with both will become functionally impossible. They may be forced to choose one side's standards, a choice that could be reversed or restricted if geopolitical alliances falter.
So you're either locked out or you're locked in.
Exactly. It creates this difficult situation where nations either risk losing their technological sovereignty entirely or being completely locked out of the next generation of computing power.
And what about the risk of outright conflict? This isn't just geoeconomic confrontation anymore.
The risk of military action is very real. The source material suggests that the geopolitical benefits derived from achieving quantum leadership are so large, and the risks of a rival achieving it first are so catastrophic, that leading powers might take overt or covert military actions over the next decade.
To do what?
Specifically, to derail and delay their adversaries' efforts to build functional quantum computing systems. This includes things like advanced cyber attacks against quantum research labs or, supply chain sabotage. The stakes are truly existential, warranting aggressive interference.
Okay, given that level of mistrust and potential conflict, I have to introduce an element of skepticism here. The sources are suggesting that leading powers must initiate dialogue toward a quantum non-proliferation treaty and agree to ban the offensive use of mass decryption. Isn't that just hopelessly optimistic given the fragmentation and confrontation the GRPS describes?
That is a critical question. And I think the consensus is that the dialogue is necessary, even if it seems impossible today. Leading quantum powers have to initiate sustained dialogue to establish some guardrails.
But what's a realistic goal?
The immediate goal should be achievable. Agreeing to ban the use of quantum technology for mass decryption and high-level cyber attacks that compromise critical infrastructure. This would at least establish basic ethical and strategic limits against the most devastating potential use case of Shor's algorithm, even while we acknowledge the low current likelihood of a full treaty.
So, establishing ethical and diplomatic red lines, even without a formal treaty, could at least provide a baseline expectation for future conflict.
Exactly. And looking further down the line, managing proliferation is paramount. A full-fledged quantum non-proliferation treaty with mutual verification mechanisms may eventually be needed. The primary long-term objective is to prevent these powerful disruptive technologies from falling into the hands of non-state actors, like sophisticated criminal groups or terrorist organizations.
Because that would destabilize global security far beyond the current state rivalry. Okay, now let's pivot to the rest of the world. The countries outside the US and China. The sources recognize a growing quantum divide, leaving regions in sub-Saharan Africa, Latin America, parts of Asia without concrete strategies to participate. They're just passive recipients of risk.
Right.
How do these nations move from being passive observers to active participants, or at least active mitigators?
They cannot rely on organic development. It won't happen. They need highly strategic, bespoke roadmaps. Governments must employ comprehensive planning tools like the Quantum Economy Blueprint, QEB, to structure their response.
And what is the QEB exactly?
It's a structured framework that helps countries define two core intertwined objectives. First, how to build policy to mitigate the inherent risks of Q-Day. And second, how to strategically capture the potential economic benefits of the technology without bankrupting the national R&D budget.
And the first step in applying that blueprint is a rigorous, honest self-assessment, which means using classic strategic tools.
Absolutely. Policymakers are strongly encouraged to conduct comprehensive SWOT assessments, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats that are specific to the quantum sector.
So, for example,
For example, a nation needs to assess its domestic talent pipeline, which might be a strength, or its reliance on imported high-end chips, a clear weakness. Then look at the opportunity to specialize in quantum-safe software development and the threats posed by foreign IP theft. This has to be coupled with detailed quantum supply chain risk analyses to identify exactly where they are vulnerable to geoeconomic confrontation.
to make sure their vision aligns with their country's specific economic and technological DNA?
Precisely.
That seems like a massive undertaking. So once a country has identified its strategic path, how does it actually participate economically without committing to the decades of massive indigenous hardware investment that China or the U.S. have already poured in?
There are three practical avenues for non-superpower economic participation. One is focusing on deepening research and development R&D capabilities in highly specific niches, rather than trying to build the entire computing stack.
So specializing in quantum-resistant materials, for example, or specific software protocols, rather than the entire QPU, the quantum processing unit itself.
Exactly. The second avenue is to strategically participate in the global quantum manufacturing supply chain by providing specific, often lower-cost inputs like specialized metals, optics, or high-skilled workforces tailored to the sector's needs. This allows them to capture economic value without needing to master the most complex, politically sensitive technology layers.
And the most immediately accessible path, which bypasses the need for building any physical hardware whatsoever.
That would be preparing to engage fully with quantum-as-a-service models. This is essentially purchasing subscriptions for quantum computing time from centralized providers like IBM, Amazon, or Google.
A utility model.
A utility model. It allows countries, especially those without massive indigenous resources, to gain crucial access to powerful quantum capabilities for research, optimization, and application development. It ensures they are not left behind in the application space, even if they lag in hardware construction. It democratizes access, though, it does maintain technological dependence.
We've established the catastrophic nature of the threat, the potential for mass decryption and systemic failure, and the intense global competition surrounding it. Now we have to confront the painful reality. Where is the world in terms of defending itself? What do the sources say about the global readiness gap?
The data on global readiness is, for me, the most alarming part of this entire deep dive. Despite the expert consensus that Q-Day has a 50% chance of occurring within a decade, organizations are lagging catastrophically.
How badly?
The latest estimates suggest that only 5% of organizations globally have actually implemented any form of quantum-safe encryption.
Wait, only 5%?
5%. That is a stunning level of exposure, especially when you consider the long-term threat of harvest now, decrypt later.
And beyond just implementation, what about organizational awareness and prioritization? Do corporate leaders truly grasp the severity of this risk?
The awareness level is equally low and indicative of, frankly, profound institutional failure. The IBM Quantum Safe Readiness Index notes that the average quantum safe readiness score across global organizations is only 25 out of 100.
25 out of 100.
And it gets worse. A mere 12% of employers surveyed even view quantum and encryption as critical technologies that will fundamentally transform their organizations. This indicates a profound disconnect between the technical timeline identified by experts and the operational priorities set by corporate leadership.
They're still treating Q-Day as a distant theoretical possibility.
Exactly.
The ticking clock is the critical factor here. If Q-Day is potentially less than 10 years away, why is this delay in preparation so uniquely dangerous compared to other cybersecurity threats?
It's due to the sheer complexity and systemic time required for a cryptographic transition. This is not like patching a firewall. Our sources warn that even simple, less disruptive technological shifts typically take a decade or more to implement fully across global IT infrastructure.
Especially in complex multinational organizations and critical infrastructure.
Especially there, the effort required to update the entire global cryptographic foundation, the public key infrastructure underpinning all digital trust, is exceptionally complex. It requires system-wide inventory, assessment, and migration. We just do not have time to wait until Q-Day is a certainty, because the migration process itself consumes a significant portion of the decade we have left.
So action must be taken now. What's the immediate non-negotiable step organizations must be taking right now to begin the defense process?
The immediate mandated action is the assessment and eventual adoption of standards for post-quantum cryptography, or PQC. The U.S. National Institute of Standards and Technology, NIST, has really taken the global lead in issuing these new standards,
Selecting families of algorithms.
right? Like lattice-based cryptography, that is specifically designed to resist Shor's algorithm and other known quantum attacks. These NIST standards are quickly becoming the necessary benchmark for other jurisdictions, including the EU, which has developed its own transition roadmap. This is the first vital defensive layer.
But the sources also warn that the PQC standards issued today are designed to resist known algorithms. That implies the solution might only be temporary, meaning institutions need to fundamentally change how they handle security moving forward.
That's where the concept of crypto agility becomes the long-term institutional necessity. Organizations must build the capability, the infrastructure, and the governance to update their cryptographic infrastructure constantly and rapidly.
So PQC is the shield for today, but crypto agility is the ability to change shields tomorrow.
That's a great way to put it. While PQC standards are resistant to today's threats, the sources explicitly warn that new, undiscovered quantum attack algorithms continue to be researched and are highly likely to emerge.
So crypto agility is essentially future-proofing your security framework by building constant adaptability into the system, making cryptographic components modular and easily swappable.
Exactly. To be truly crypto agile, an organization must institutionalize three key features: a comprehensive inventory of all cryptographic assets and dependencies, knowing where every key is used, a dynamic risk assessment framework that continuously rates those assets, and automated tools that allow for the swift, low-disruption swapping of encryption protocols across the entire ecosystem.
This has to be an institutionalized effort, not a one-time migration.
It has to be.
So synthesizing this into a comprehensive organizational roadmap, what are the key institutional steps required beyond just implementing the new algorithms? How does governance step up?
Institutional preparedness must be formalized today across the entire organization. There are three main governance pillars. First, organizations need to establish formal PQC roadmaps and timelines immediately, designating resources and clear ownership for the transition.
Someone has to be in charge.
Someone has to be in charge. Second, they must integrate and institutionalize quantum risk within their formal organizational governance frameworks. It needs to be treated as a core, high-priority, systemic risk, not some ancillary IT concern.
And the third pillar must involve the people.
Absolutely. The third pillar is awareness and workforce training. Organizations must significantly raise awareness of the quantum threat across the entire workforce, from the board to secure funding down to the IT staff and developers who have to implement the changes. If only 12% of employers view quantum as critical, the culture shift required is massive.
And finally, let's revisit R&D. The investment isn't just about building the quantum computer, it's about funding the defense against it.
That's right. R&D, according to the GRPS analysis, is identified as the top approach for reducing the overall risk of adverse outcomes of frontier technologies. Investment in research into new defenses, new security paradigms, and ongoing risk monitoring, including quantum threat intelligence gathering, is absolutely crucial. This ensures that organizations aren't simply chasing the last known threat, but are prepared for the next, as yet undiscovered quantum breakthrough that might render the current PQC standards obsolete. #outro.
This has been a critical, in-depth exploration. The sources provided a stunning and, I think, very urgent synthesis of technical vulnerability and strategic fragmentation.
We've established that Q-Day, the moment Shor's algorithm can break global encryption within 24 hours, is a near-term certainty, with a 50% probability of occurring within the next decade.
Which places the strategic time horizon for migration squarely on today's leadership teams.
Absolutely. And this technical vulnerability is playing out against an extremely negative global backdrop. An age of competition where geoeconomic confrontation is the #1 short-term risk, specifically targeting strategic sectors like quantum and AI to maintain technological control.
And despite the existential stakes, the threat to data confidentiality and systemic digital trust, the global readiness remains critically low.
Critically low, with only 5% of organizations implementing quantum-safe encryption, underscoring the immediate non-negotiable urgency for PQC adoption and building institutional crypto agility.
So wrapping this up, we always ask, what does this all mean for the bigger picture? Beyond the technical failures, what is the ultimate consequence for the societies we live in?
I think the ultimate so what lies at that volatile intersection of technological and societal risk. We noted that societal polarization is already high, fueled by mass misinformation, and mistrust in institutions is pervasive.
Right.
Now, imagine a major, confirmed mass decryption event, a successful quantum attack hitting critical financial infrastructure or public utility services. The resulting systemic collapse of digital trust would compound the instability already present. This technical failure, perceived as an institutional failure, would likely drive profound public disillusionment,
Leading to what?
leading to a dramatic surge in anti-government sentiment, further challenging the already faltering social contract. It's a technical apocalypse that could trigger a social and political fragmentation far worse than anything predicted in the GRPS.
That is the crucial layer of risk we need to keep thinking about. How a technical failure can shatter social cohesion and political stability. Understanding these converging global risks is the first, most crucial step in building resilience, not just technologically, but institutionally.
Indeed. We hope this deep dive has given you, the learner, the necessary insight and actionable mandate to navigate this complex technological and geopolitical landscape with urgency and with clarity.
And we thank our sponsors for supporting this necessary exploration into global security and digital resilience. For those who need to manage these extreme security risks, implement foresight in their planning, and access cutting-edge risk intelligence, we encourage you to visit www.cisomarketplace.com and www.breach.company. Until the next deep dive, stay vigilant and stay thoroughly informed.